The Pittsburgh Steelers just absolutely fleeced the Green Bay Packers for their current actively all-time sack leader. And all it took was a 7th round draft pick. So, yesterday, before the trade deadline at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, the Pittsburgh Steelers made 2 moves. I made a video on the Steelers trading for wide receiver Mike Williams of the Jets, but they also traded for edge rusher, outside linebacker Preston Smith of the Green Bay Packers for a 7th round draft pick. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they get some depth at that position. Some people were left stunned about this move, and it was an absolute fleece by the Steelers. But first, before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they give up a 5th round draft pick for Mike Williams. That was a good get. But the Steelers, not too long later, traded a 7th round draft pick for a 31-year-old and current all-time sack leader of the Green Bay Packers, Preston Smith. What does current all-time sack leader mean? Well, he's actively playing still. Obviously, he's not the all-time in terms of their franchise, but as of players who are still playing, he's the top of the top. He has around 69 sacks all-time for his career, and with the Green Bay Packers, he had 33.5 of them. So, he was a really good player, and he's a consistent player as well. Before I go over how he'll fit on this team, let me just say how this is a fleece in my eyes. Because Preston Smith, he's a player who his stats speak for himself. Over his career, the last however many seasons, let's just look at the sacks that he's gotten. Last season, 8. The year before, 8.5. 9 the year before. 4, then 12, and then 8. So he's consistently put around 8 sacks per season in his career. And he's only 31 years old right now. Some people would call that old for an outside linebacker edge rusher. But you have to think, TJ Watt is the exact same age. Obviously, I'm not comparing the two in terms of play style and stats and everything like that, because TJ Watt is by far the best player in the league on the defense side of the ball. But Preston Smith is a player who is consistent. And just because he's 31 years old doesn't mean that he's going to slow down anytime soon. And right now, this season, he was a player who wasn't getting consistent playing time for the Green Bay Packers, so his stats are a little bit down this season. But he's still an impact player when he's on the field. And a 7th round draft pick for someone who is a consistent veteran is a really good deal. Because who else are you going to get in the draft? For a 7th round draft pick, just say this upcoming season, who's going to be able to play, let alone make your rotation. He's going to be in the rotation. He's going to be the backup when TJ Watt needs rest, Alex Highsmith needs rest, and for right now, Nick Herbig is out. So Preston Smith will be the 3rd outside linebacker. Which 7th round pick are you going to come in and just play right away? Probably none. So Preston Smith for a 7th round draft pick, that is huge. And also, his contract is not guaranteed for the next 2 seasons. Meaning he is under contract for the next 2 years. He'll be making over $10 million. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't want him anymore, they could just cut him from the team after this season, and they won't have to pay a dime. They won't have to pay anything towards Preston Smith. So getting a 7th round draft pick for someone who they could get on their roster and maybe cut them and then negotiate a new contract for them in the offseason is a really good pickup. And also, the reason why it's a fleece on the Pittsburgh Steelers half is because of those reasons, but also the Green Bay Packers are still paying over half of his contract because of dead money in terms of restructure of his contract they've done with him. So they still have to pay probably 3/4 of his contract, and all they got was a 7th round draft pick, and he's not even on the team anymore. So that is a fleece from the Pittsburgh Steelers side, and also a fleece of the Green Bay Packers still having to pay his contract even though he's not on the team. So the Pittsburgh Steelers get a great deal on this trade. So the reason why it was also a good deal for the Steelers, well, you look at Mike Tomlin's press conference literally the day of the trade. Just yesterday, the day of the trade that they traded for both those players, he said that the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking at options for players around the league and they're engaged in the trade market. And then he was talking about the outside linebacker position. And he was talking about having Alex Highsmith back and how great it was because it allowed Steelers to do what they do best, rushing the passer with TJ Watt. And he said when Alex Highsmith and also Nick Herbig were both out, they couldn't do what they usually do in terms of rushing the passer and how they utilize TJ Watt normally. So what does that mean? He basically just dropped a hint that, hey, we're looking at options for players in the market. Because just saying Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith are both out again, then they could do what they want to do. Because now they have Preston Smith on the roster. So he was basically just dropping a hint in his press conference that they were looking for edge rushers. And obviously he feels as though this pickup could allow them to do what they still do, even if other players are out in terms of rushing the passer. And just you have to think about it like this. From my perspective, you look at TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig. Those are the top three guys. But now you also have Preston Smith. Instead of playing Jeremiah Moon, a player who has basically no experience in this league, even though he did good and his time filling in for some players that are injured, you still want a veteran there. So now, when those two go off the field, Preston Smith and Nick Herbig could kind of, not obviously replicate it exactly, but kind of still do and make impact plays for a few plays here and there. And when players are injured, for example, Alex Highsmith seems to always be dealing with a groin injury. If he is out for any amount of games, and even Nick Herbig, if he's out with a hamstring injury, Preston Smith could start. And he's a player who started in this league many, many games and put up a really good stat line for like 5 plus consecutive seasons, getting double-digit sacks some years, 8+ sacks, basically average. So he's a player who can still do what he does best in terms of rushing the passer and what the Steelers want to do. That's what Steelers want to do, rush the passer. And you won't get much of a drop-off with Preston Smith. So injuries happen. You look at TJ Watt. He got injured late last season and then missed the playoff game, and he wasn't active for the playoff game against the Bills. So having Preston Smith now is another player who's been in this league and made an impact. So you can never have enough edge players, enough players along the defensive line, and now they get another one in Preston Smith. And when looking at Preston Smith, I believe he could play more than just outside linebacker. He's a big body player. He's not just your regular edge rusher, a slim guy like, for example, Nick Herbig, who can't play on the defense line. I believe if Preston Smith, if they play him in a DeMarvin Leal type of role along the defense line, that he could do both. Just like DeMarvin Leal did this season. He could play the edge rusher, but he could also play on the defensive line as well. So, all in all, to recap this trade, the Pittsburgh Steelers get Preston Smith, a 31-year-old savvy player who has started 138 games in his 10-year career with Washington Commanders and also the Green Bay Packers. He recorded 68.5 career sacks, around 33 of them with the Green Bay Packers, and he's a former second-round pick from Washington, out of Mississippi State. The 6'5", 265-pound Smith is a really good against the run, as well as having 430 tackles, including 71 for loss. So not only is he a pass rusher, but he could also stop the run as well. That's why he could play along the defense line if needed in a DeMarvin Leal type of role. So he's previously an outside linebacker in the Green Bay's 3-4 defensive scheme. Smith moved to more of a defensive end role with the Packers this season with a change in coordinators. So that's why he could do both. He started all 9 games, recording 19 tackles, 2.5 sacks. So he even got 2.5 sacks from an inside role. Imagine if he's on the outside. That probably would have been doubled. So, 6 times in his 10 NFL seasons, Smith has recorded at least 8 sacks, including a career-high 12 in 2019. So, Smith, he's a great addition to the Pittsburgh Steelers to kick-start their pass rush when players are injured, but also a player who could stop the run as well from both the outside and inside defensive line positions. So Smith, he will fill a big role for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he will play like a Marcus Golden type of backup role for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season for however many games they have left, 8. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, all this took to get Preston Smith was a 7th round draft pick, and that is a fleece. on the part of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Omar Khan. He does it again, getting a really good, solid pickup, someone who they more than likely would decline the options for next year, but rework his contract and try to keep him under contract and keep him re-signed to this team. So Preston Smith, he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and this trade should reap benefits right away in terms of the abilities to make plays, stuffing the run, rushing the passer, inside and out. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this trade. Do you believe it was a fleece, only taking a 7th round draft pick? Or do you believe that's too much, they shouldn't have traded for him, and you don't like him as a player, and you don't think he'll help this team? Or do you believe, like I believe, this is a really, really good pickup, and you can't get much better for a 7th round draft pick? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. You may not think we need it, but having depth is always a good thing, especially trying to make a playoff push. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis reports, everything like that. Cover everything Steelers news, rumors, highlights, analysis, everything. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and until next time, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.